All right, let's unpack this. Many of you listening are probably curious about, breaking into tech, or maybe you're looking to advance your digital skills. It's a hot topic, right?
Yeah.
That desire for high demand skills. So for today's deep dive, we're really focusing on one specific program, the Meta Front-End Developer Professional Certificate. It's offered on Coursera. Our mission here is basically to cut through the noise, pull out the most crucial info from the sources we looked at, and give you a shortcut to understanding what this certificate is all about.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, I think, is how directly this addresses such an in-demand role. A front-end developer, well, they build everything you actually see and interact with on a website, the visuals, the buttons, all that. And the core appeal of this certificate, based on what we're seeing, is its promise of a clear path, especially for new learners. It explicitly says, no prior degree or experience needed to get started building job-ready skills. It's pretty significant.
It really is. What jumped out at me was just how low those entry barriers seem for potentially such a powerful career path. I mean, it's definitely pitched as beginner level. No degree or prior experience required. Yeah. That's a direct quote. And the numbers, wow. I saw figures like 376,073 already enrolled, plus a really strong rating, 4.7 stars from over 19,000 reviews. Does that kind of popularity surprise you, given it's taught by Meta staff and you get a Meta credential?
Honestly, no, not really surprised. I think it's a direct response to this huge demand for accessible ways into tech, that no prior experience thing. It's not just lowering the bar. It feels like a strategic move for career changers, for anyone new.
Yeah.
And the value of an industry-recognized credential from a company like Meta, that's huge. It definitely helps boost confidence, like the source material says, and gives you a competitive advantage, no question. Plus, they really push the flexible schedule. Learn at your own pace. The estimates we saw were like maybe 6 weeks at 10 hours a week if you really hustle, or more like 4 months at 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
That flexibility is just critical for people juggling other things.
Okay, so the barrier's low, it's flexible. Let's get practical then. What skills, what actual tools will someone learn? What will they be able to do after finishing this?
Right, so you're really building from the ground up. The program teaches you how to create a responsive website. That means using HTML for the basic structure, CSS for all the visual styling, and then JavaScript for the interactive parts.
The core three.
Exactly. But it goes beyond that. You get into specific frameworks and tools, things like React, which is this massive JavaScript library everyone's using for user interfaces, and Bootstrap, that popular CSS framework for making sites look good on phones and desktops quickly, responsive design.
Okay.
And it's not just coding in isolation. You learn practical stuff like using GitHub repositories and version control.
The internet.
Essential. Absolutely essential for teamwork. The sources specifically list skills like Git, Jest, that's for testing your JavaScript code responsive web design, React.js, and even user experience design fundamentals.
Wow, okay, that's a pretty comprehensive toolkit. So what does this all mean for the aspiring developer? How do these tools translate into, making cool websites?
Well, that's the key, right? It's not just theory. The program really emphasizes in-demand design skills. You're learning to create professional page layouts using industry-standard tools. They mention Bootstrap, React, and also Figma.
Figma for design mockup.
Exactly, for wireframes and prototypes. And learners will actually build portfolio-ready projects. These are projects you can show off in job interviews. It really highlights the hands-on nature. They call them applied learning projects scattered throughout.
So you're constantly doing, not just reading.
Precisely. You apply what you learn almost immediately.
That sounds great. So let's trace that journey. It's 9 courses, right? And they build on the skills of the previous one. Can you sort of walk us through how that progresses, maybe some highlights?
Sure. It kicks off with Introduction to Front-End Development, about 19 hours. Just lays the groundwork, explains front-end versus back-end, that sort of thing. Then you jump into a pretty meaty course, Programming with JavaScript, that's 46 hours, covers the basics, objects, arrays, even testing with Jest.
Okay, a solid foundation.
Then version control, about 18 hours on Git and GitHub, critical stuff.
Yep.
After that, HTML and CSS in depth, 30 hours, really focusing on responsive layouts and using Bootstrap effectively.
And you mentioned React being big.
Yeah, that comes next. There's React Basics for 30 hours and then Advanced React for another 26. So a real deep dive into React. But what I find fascinating here is that it's not just coding. There's this whole other dimension. They include principles of UX/UI design. That's 23 hours on user experience fundamentals, research, accessibility, and actually creating wireframes and prototypes in Figma. So you learn to think like a designer, too, not just a coder.
That feels really well-rounded.
It is. And it all leads up to the front-end developer capstone. About 27 hours. This is where you bring your new skill set together to create a full front-end web application. And they specifically mention demonstrating clean and bug-free coding. It's your big portfolio piece.
Okay, so you finish, you got this capstone project, this portfolio. What's the actual job market like? The sources seem pretty optimistic about software engineers generally.
Oh, absolutely. The outlook is strong. They project growth of 22% by 2030 for software engineers overall. That's way faster than the average across all jobs, which is around 5%.
Wow.
And the sheer number of jobs. More than 1.8 million jobs in the U.S. alone in 2020. Front-end developers specifically, well, they focus on the design, look, and feel of a website. So the sources suggest it's a great fit if you like thinking creatively and have an interest in visual design. Seems like a solid path.
That's definitely compelling. Now, getting the skills is one thing, landing the job is another. How does this program actually help with the job search part, beyond just teaching code?
Right, and this is crucial. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the program doesn't just teach you coding. It seems very focused on training you to get hired.
How so?
There's a whole course called Coding Interview Preparation. It's 12 hours. It explicitly covers how to prepare for a coding interview, how to solve problems using code. It even mentions preparing specifically for meta interviews, which is interesting.
Ah, direct prep.
Yeah. And beyond the technical interview, there's broader support, guidance to develop a strong portfolio, a polished resume, and sharp interview skills. And I found this part really insightful. They talk about the emotional components of the interview process.
That's often overlooked, isn't it?
Totally. Dealing with nerves, imposter syndrome, all that. It seems like a genuinely holistic approach to job readiness.
It really does sound comprehensive, especially for something aimed at beginners. But let's be real. As so many people potentially doing this certificate, what else might someone need to do, to actually stand out?
That's a really good question. Because, yeah, the certificate gives you a fantastic launch pad, right? But standing out, that often comes down to going a bit further. The program pushes portfolio building, so really polishing those projects, maybe adding a unique personal project that could make a difference.
Like applying the skills to something you're passionate about.
Exactly. Also, networking, even online, and just staying curious. Tech changes fast. Showing you're engaged beyond the course material is always a plus. The certificate gets you interview ready, but winning the job might take that extra initiative.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Logistics. For listeners thinking, all right, I'm interested, how do they actually access this? What are the options?
So, there are a few ways in. Coursera offers a 7-day free trial. After that, it typically rolls into a Coursera Plus subscription. That gives you unlimited access to like 10,000 plus courses, not just this one certificate.
Okay, subscription model.
Right. But there's another option. You can audit the courses in the program for free.
Audit. What does that mean exactly?
It means you can watch the videos, read the materials, but you generally don't get to submit assignments for grades, and you don't get the final certificate.
Ah, so it's more for just exploring the content.
Yeah, exactly. Good if you're just curious or want to taste before committing. Gives you flexibility.
Got it. And thinking longer term, how does this certificate fit into maybe a bigger educational picture? Like, does it count for college credit or anything like that?
That's an important question for planning. So the professional certificate itself, like most industry certs, doesn't directly grant academic credits. However, the sources do say you may be able to have your learning recognized for credit if you get accepted into certain specific online degree programs later. They gave examples like a Bachelor of Information Technology at Illinois Tech or an MSc Computer Science at Heriot-Watt University.
So potential pathway,
Yeah.
but not automatic credit.
Right. You'd need to check with the university. And it's probably worth clarifying, too, this certificate is front-end, focusing on JavaScript and React. Coursera also has a separate back-end developer certificate, which leans more towards Python and SQL, databases, server-side stuff.
Different tools for a different job.
Exactly. Though there's overlap. Both would cover fundamentals like HTML, CSS, and definitely version control, shared foundations.
Yay. That clarifies the landscape a bit. So wrapping things up then, it really sounds like the Meta Front-End Developer Professional Certificate on Coursera is, well, a very accessible, pretty comprehensive, and clearly industry-focused path into a high-demand field. Backed by Meta, big focus on job readiness, portfolio building. Seems like a solid package.
I'd agree. And maybe a final thought for listeners to mull over. In a world that's just increasingly digital, think about the impact you could have. Imagine mastering these skills, the skills to actually build the websites and apps that connect everyone online. That's pretty powerful.